Subscribe to our YouTube channel and press the bell icon so that you never miss any video lesson from RAU'S IAS Study Circle.
Welcome to the Daily News Simplified, the analysis of the Hindu newspaper from UPSC perspective. Today we will discuss the daily edition of the Hindu newspaper dated 15th June 2022. And the articles that we will discuss today are displayed on your screen. So let us start the discussion.
Dear UPSC aspirant, you must be aware of the fact that selection of right optional is very important from the perspective of getting top ranks. And if you're feeling confused about which optional to choose, then we have a solution for you. You can actually meet and interact with RAU'S IAS optional educators so that you can get complete clarity in terms of which optional to choose, how you're going to approach it, and how the teachers are going to help you in terms of developing a holistic approach in this particular perspective. Now, the optional counseling session will be conducted in two centers. First is, of course, Bengaluru, where we'll be conducting optional counseling session for sociology and history on 17th from 10 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. and for public administration and geography from 3:30 p.m. to 6 p.m. Now, in this session, you can actually attend the session, interact with the teacher, and can understand how the teachers are going to help you in terms of solving your problems and giving you the best output that you are expecting from the coming attempt at the UPSC examination. Optional counseling session for our Delhi centers will be conducted on 18th and 19th, and these will be conducted for 8 different subjects. On 18th, we'll be conducting the optional counseling for sociology and public administration from 10 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. and for psychology and history from 3:30 p.m. to 6 p.m. On 19th of July, we'll be conducting the optional counseling for anthropology and PSIR from 10 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. and for geography and economics from 3:30 p.m. to 6 p.m. So if in case you haven't finalized your optional so far, or you want to understand more about the subject, then you can interact with teachers of RAU'S IAS and can develop complete clarity. You might also be confused between two optionals, so you can actually interact with the teachers of both the subject and can understand which one will fit your bill perfectly. Here you are going to interact, you will also understand how teachers basically teach and how they will be helping you in terms of hand-holding you in this entire journey and become more and more proficient in terms of taking the optional in the right perspective. Try to understand that when you talk about the optional, it is a journey that matters, and journey matters when you have the right guide. So the teachers of RAU'S IAS are going to be your best guide in this entire process.
This article on page number 6 has been written by the former National Security Advisor of India, M.K. Narayan. In this article, he has highlighted that in the ongoing Russia-Ukraine war, the much anticipated cyber war has not emerged as one of the biggest threats, because if cyber attacks would have played a key role in the Russia-Ukraine war, the war would have led to a clear-cut outcome if Russia had shown its cyber supremacy or either Ukraine had shown its cyber supremacy. That is why he has said that there is little clarity about the extent to which both sides have utilized cyber weapons, and there could be underlying reasons for that. Now, without getting into the details of the Russia-Ukraine war and what role has these cyber attacks played in this particular role, let us look at this previous year question that was asked in 2013 in the General Studies paper 3 by the UPSC in the security section. The question reads, cyber warfare is considered by some defense analysts to be larger threat than even Al-Qaeda or terrorism. What do you understand by cyber warfare, and outline the cyber threats which India is vulnerable to and bring out the state of country's preparedness to deal with the same. So in this article and discussion, we will look at what exactly is meant by this term cyber warfare, what are the kind of tools or what are the types of cyber warfare that can be deployed by various countries. Thirdly, what are the tools that are regularly being used, which are the part of cyber attacks. After that, we'll look at India's preparedness. Also, what is the impact of such cyber warfare or cyber attacks? And lastly, we'll look at what are the challenges that India has and also what India needs to do further to boost its cyber security preparedness. So let us look at all these aspects in detail, and they can be very important for us from General Studies paper 3 point of view in the security section in the cyber security part. Now, when it comes to cyber warfare, the cyber warfare is simply the use of cyber attacks against an enemy state. So in this context, it is similar to the typical or the traditional and the conventional warfare that takes place between two countries. And in this case, in case of cyber warfare, cyber attacks are utilized against an enemy state. Now, if you look at the types of cyber warfares that can be deployed by countries against enemy state, these can be based on the expected or intended outcomes of such cyber attacks. First in this line is the cyber espionage. This simply means spying on the enemy state. In this, the countries utilize the cyber systems or the information systems to spy on the other countries. One of the best examples of spying is simply the Pegasus software that was there in the news recently in case of India. And this Pegasus spyware was being used to spy upon the cell phones. And such Pegasus software can also be used for spying upon the enemy country and its officials. Second intended objective and the type of warfare can be sabotage. That is, the countries utilize the cyber attacks to sabotage any important or critical infrastructure of the other country. For example, an attack was carried out by United States of America that was known as Stuxnet on the Iran's nuclear facility. The third tool that can be used for cyber attacks is the propaganda attack, and this could include the psychological warfare where the misinformation could be spread related to any particular issue that is ongoing in an enemy state. Also, such cyber attacks can be used for economic disruption, where we are already witnessing certain kinds of cyber attacks on the banking systems and also the data of the citizens. And finally, there can be surprise cyber attacks which can further lead to escalation of warfare between two enemy countries. In this context, let us look in detail what exactly is meant by these types of cyber warfares. Now, if you look at cyber espionage, this simply means the act or practice of obtaining secret information which can be personal, sensitive or classified information of individuals, competitors or the government by the use of malicious softwares which are sometimes known as Trojan horses as well as spywares. And the motive here is to obtain the secret information which could go against the national security of a country. So this kind of threat is also available against India, and this is one of the threats that India faces. Second is basically the sabotage, which means targeting the computer information systems, infrastructure and computer networks. Motive here is to damage or destroy the targeted computer network system. One of the prime example of this is the use of Stuxnet software, which was used by United States of America against Iran's nuclear program to sabotage its nuclear facilities. Third in this line is the cyber terrorism, which simply means convergence of terrorism and cyberspace. Now previously, the terrorists did not have exposure to using the information systems that are coming up because of the information revolution. In this line, the cyberspace is utilized by the terrorists for a number of purposes. These can include planning of terrorist attacks, recruitment of sympathizers, spreading propaganda to radicalize people, and to raise funds. And we are aware that a similar situation we are facing in case of Jammu and Kashmir, in which the terrorist organizations from across the border, which are operating from Pakistan, are utilizing the cyberspace for planning terrorist attacks in India, recruiting sympathizers or terrorists in India, and also spreading propaganda to radicalize people. And also they are using it as a means of funding. Further, we are aware that propaganda is also one of the types of cyber warfare that can be used, and it is basically a part of psychological warfare, and it can lead to controlling the information in whatever form it takes and influence the public opinion. We are aware that such propaganda war is being unleashed in case of Jammu and Kashmir, where the people are getting resented against the Indian state. Also, another type of cyber warfare that can be utilized is the economic disruption. And in this, the prime example of such economic disruption that is caused by the cyber attacks is the example of 2017, when WannaCry and Petya, which are ransomwares, were used to cause large-scale disruptions in Ukraine as well as in United Kingdom's National Health Service. And the last type of cyber warfare that can be utilized is surprise cyber warfare. In this, it is said that such warfare is carried out by a country or its proxies to attack the computer systems in other countries. This can include theft, vandalism, which can include defacing web pages. We continuously see such kind of attacks happening in case of India also, and in case of many other countries. And also destruction of critical information infrastructure. In this line, some of the experts in the cybersecurity space have theorized a case when a cyber Pearl Harbor kind of attack can take place. If you are aware, Pearl Harbor attack took place during the Second World War, when the United States of America also entered into Second World War, and that led to the escalation of the war. So simply, the thinkers or the experts have theorized that a cyber Pearl Harbor kind of attack can take place, which could escalate into a full-blown war. So these are the types of cyber threats or the types of cyber warfares based on the motives that can be utilized by countries against the enemy countries. In this line, let us look at what are the tools that are used to conduct such kind of cyber warfare. Now, to carry out cyber warfare with certain intended motives, the cyber attackers or the countries can use these tools that are available right now. These include malwares, spywares, denial of service, cryptojacking, as well as dark web. So let us look at all these aspects one by one to understand how these tools can be utilized to conduct cyber attacks against the enemy state. So if you look at malware, it is simply a malicious software. So that is why it is called as malicious for mal and ware for software. So it is simply any program or file that is harmful to a computer user. And this can include viruses, worms, Trojan horses, as well as spyware. So it is a broad term that is used for softwares which are utilized and that are harmful to computer users. Now, such malwares, which are types of softwares, can perform a variety of functions. These can include stealing, encrypting or deleting sensitive data, altering or hijacking core computing functions, and monitoring the user's computer activity without their permission. A prime example of such malware is basically the Stuxnet, which was used by USA against Iran's nuclear installations. A type of malware is basically a spyware which is used to spy upon the enemy country and its officials or population. In this line, Pegasus is a surveillance software that has been developed by the Israel, and this software is used by Israel to track the terrorist activities. However, this can also be utilized against enemy states. And Pegasus related issue has also come up in case of India, where journalists have accused the government of spying on them. Now, this enables remote surveillance of mobile phones. In this line, USA had started a surveillance program which tried to spy upon the heads of the governments of different countries, and this program was started by the National Security Agency of United States of America. So this also utilized certain kinds of spywares to spy upon the heads of the states or heads of the governments of different countries. Further, Germany was also accused of carrying out such surveillance program in the past. Then there is denial of service, that is also a kind of malware attack. This basically prevents or impairs the authorized use of information system. For example, ransomware and WannaCry, which was utilized in case of Ukraine and UK's National Health Services. And this basically stopped, or it was used as a ransomware. Ransomware because it installs a software in the computer systems which asks for a payment of certain amount, and only then the user can access that particular computer. So basically, WannaCry was a kind of ransomware that was utilized to stop or cripple the Ukraine as well as United Kingdom's National Health Services. Then another term or another tool that is being utilized these days is known as cryptojacking. Now simply we are aware that the cryptocurrencies are created through a process called mining, which utilizes high-scale computations using the computer systems. And in this mining process, to mine digital coins, which are cryptocurrencies, the miners need to use high-end processors that consume a lot of electricity. Now, these mining processes that are utilized by various miners across the globe to create the cryptocurrencies, they drop malware in an unsuspecting user's computer. Now, these malwares that are deployed by the cryptojackers for creating cryptocurrencies do not use the victim's data. However, what they do is that they drain the resources of the CPUs of the computer, and it ultimately leads to slowing down of the system and also leads to increased electricity usage and can cause irreparable damage to the hardware of that particular computer. So because the mining process requires high-end computational processes, the cryptojackers, what they do is that they install malwares and utilize the processing capability of any unsuspecting computer system, which ultimately leads to increased electricity usage, slowing down of the system, and also leading to irreparable damage to the hardware. And then we are aware that there is deep web and dark web, which is also a tool used to carry out cyber attacks. Now, deep web or dark web simply refers to anything that is existing on the internet. However, they are not accessible via search engines like Google. And this dark web is utilized by terrorist organizations, smugglers, as well as hackers. So after looking at the tools of the cyber warfare, let us look at what can be the impact of such kind of cyber attacks. And this impact, India is also vulnerable to. First is, of course, the loss of integrity, which means unauthorized changes that are made to data or the IT systems, which can result in inaccuracy, fraud, or erroneous decision making that brings the integrity of the system under suspicion. For example, a lot of data is being utilized in the Indian government in order to take certain decisions. However, if the cyber attacks are carried out, the data will be compromised, and in that case, the policy making process can get hampered. Second is the loss of availability, which can include an attack on mission critical IT systems, which makes it unavailable to the end users. For example, if the system provides that the users can utilize a particular facility of the government of India by using Aadhaar cards, and if the Aadhaar system is hijacked, then this will lead to loss of availability. Then there is loss of confidentiality, which simply leads to privacy of the data of the individuals, and the consequence can be unauthorized disclosure of information, which ranges from loss of public confidence to national security threats. Then there are also threats of physical destruction, which means ability to create actual physical harm or destruction through the use of IT systems. And a prime example of this is Stuxnet, which was utilized by USA to stop the nuclear program and attack the nuclear facility in Iran. Then it can lead to impact on data, where it can lead to impact on confidentiality, integrity, and availability of the data. It can also impact on critical information infrastructure. For example, a cyber attack was carried out by the Chinese hackers on the power system in Mumbai, and that brought the entire city to a halt. In this, the local trains, which are considered as Mumbai's lifeline, were stopped functioning and people got stranded. Similar was the attack that was carried out by USA, that was Stuxnet. Then it can lead to financial losses, and according to the Data Security Council of India, India has been the second most cyber attacks affected country between 2016 to 2018. And lastly, it affects the national security, peace and stability in a country. So these are some of the impacts of the cyber attacks. This brings us to what is the cyber security preparedness of India, which has also been asked multiple times by UPSC in the previous years. First is the Section 66F of the Information Technology Act. In this, specific provisions have been provided for dealing with issue of cyber terrorism, and provides for punishment which may extend to lifetime imprisonment. Then National Cyber Security Policy was created in 2013, or which proposes to create a workforce of 5 lakh professionals that are skilled in cyber security. Then there is National Critical Information Infrastructure Protection Center, or NCIIPC. It was established under the Information Technology Act 2000 to secure India's critical information infrastructure. And this can be seen as the national nodal agency in respect of critical information infrastructure protection. Then there is CERTAIN, which is an emergency response system that has been created, and the purpose of CERTAIN is to respond to computer security incidents, report on vulnerabilities, and promote effective IT security practices throughout the country. Then there is Cyber Surakshit Bharat initiative, and it was launched in 2018 with the aim to spread awareness about cyber crimes, building capacity for safety measures for chief information security officers and frontline IT staff across all the government departments. And then a National Cyber Coordination Center has been created. It seeks to generate necessary situational awareness of existing and potential cybersecurity threats and enable timely information sharing for proactive, preventive, and protective actions by the individuals. This also brings us to what are the certain challenges that India still faces despite having preparedness against the cyber attacks. In this line, one of the challenges is that India is not a member of the Budapest Convention on Cybersecurity. This Budapest Convention is the first international treaty which seeks to address internet and computer crime by harmonizing national laws, improving investigative techniques, and increasing cooperation among the nation. Secondly, there is lack of private sector participation in the cybersecurity framework. Also, there is shortage of the skilled professionals because the National Cybersecurity Policy 2013 had aimed at creating skilled workforce which will help in cybersecurity purposes. However, that has not been created. So one of the challenges that India faces is that we should strengthen IT Act as well as National Cybersecurity Policy 2013. And we are aware that many new challenges have come up in the case of cybersecurity attacks since this policy was created. That is why there are talks of reforming this National Cybersecurity Policy. In this line, legal and facilitative framework to fight cyber crimes are outdated and they are not well equipped enough to handle the technological advances in the case of cyber crimes. So what are the steps that India can take to improve its cybersecurity preparedness now? First is, of course, appointment of chief information security officers in all the organizations. Secondly, funds should be earmarked specifically for dealing with cybersecurity threats. Also, government should provide tax incentives to companies to upgrade their information infrastructure. Investment should also be done in case of research and development to improve cybersecurity, and this can utilize technologies like big data, artificial intelligence, etc. Further, there is a need for enhancing awareness among the people through awareness campaigns, and also there should be stricter regulatory compliance and increased self-reporting of these security incidents and breaches. Also, there is a need to improve the cyber insurance to protect the critical assets. Then crimeware or ransomware as a service is transitioning into a highly profitable industry which needs to be stopped. And last but not the least, there is a need for updating outdated as well as open source softwares, because criminals these days are continuously on a lookout for outdated web softwares, and that is why there is a need for urgently upgrading these softwares to meet the latest cyber challenges. So these are the different dimensions of the cyber warfare and the cyber security threats faced by India, also the preparedness and what needs to be done further. With this, let's take up the next news article now. This news article on page number 1 is related to the new announcement that has been made by the Government of India to increase employment opportunity for Indian youth in the Indian Armed Forces. In this line, the Prime Minister of India has announced that there will be 10 lakh persons who will get government jobs in 18 months. And such kinds of jobs will be provided based on vacancies in railways, armed forces as well as GST department. In this line, in this discussion, we'll look at one of the schemes that has been floated by the Government of India for recruitment of youth into the armed forces. And this program is known as the Agnipath program, and the personnel who will be recruited under this Agnipath program in the armed forces are known as the Agniveers. So let us look at what are the likely benefits, what are certain key facts related to this particular scheme, and what are the criticisms or concerns that have been raised in this regard. So that will be the part of our discussion in this particular news article. So in this line, the Union Cabinet has approved the recruitment scheme for Indian youth to serve in armed forces, and this scheme is known as Agnipath, and the youth who are selected under this scheme will be known as the Agniveers. So basically, this Agnipath scheme allows patriotic and motivated youth to serve in the armed forces for a period of 4 years. So let us look at what are the key features related to this particular scheme. So about 46,000 youth will be signed up with a salary of about rupees 30 to 40,000. About this scheme, the All India recruitment in Army, Navy and the Indian Force, except the officers, will be conducted at a pan-India level under this Agnipath scheme. About 46,000 will be recruited this year in this particular scheme, and the age of the youth will be recruited will be from 17.5 years to 21 years age group. The tenure of the service for the Agniveers will be 4 years tenure, which will include 6-month basic training instead of the existing 9 to 11 months. After 4 years, 25% of these Agniveers will be selected for regular cadre for a full term of 15 years. And 75% Agniveers will be demobilized with Seva Nidhi exit of package, which will include rupees 11.71 lakh and skill certificates. However, no pension and gratuity will be provided to these particular personnel who will be provided with the Seva Nidhi funds. The scheme will be progressively opened for women based on the service requirement. The stated aim of this particular scheme is to slash ballooning salary and the pension bills, because this does not include the provisions of pension, etc. Also, the salaries that will be provided will be reduced. This will also reduce the average age from existing 32 to 24 to 26 in 6 to 7 years of the Indian Army. Further, it will induct tech-savvy youth for future warfare. And the biggest motive of this particular scheme is to ensure nation building through disciplined youth with military ethos in the civil society. So before looking at the criticism, let us look at what are the certain likely benefits of this particular scheme. So first benefit is for the armed forces itself, because the defense forces will be provided with number of tech-savvy soldiers. It will also reduce the average age of the defense forces by 4 to 5 years. For Indian youth, it will allow them to get employed, support their family, and wear the uniform and inculcate a feeling of patriotism. It will further inculcate the values of discipline, sacrifice, teamwork, etc. They will also be provided with adequate re-employment opportunities, as we have seen, for those returning to society and who could emerge as the role models for the youth. Further, these Agniveers will get preference in public sector enterprises as well as state government jobs. As far as the society is concerned, as we all are aware that society is getting radicalized these days. So after serving this tenure under the scheme, the youth will be able to contribute in other sectors more effectively. And trained personnel will be available to boost national security in the times of external threat, internal threats, as well as natural disasters. However, all is not well with this scheme, and apprehensions have been raised by experts as well as retired military personnel. Let us look at these criticisms and the issues that have been raised. In this regard, the first concern that has been raised by experts is that no pilot project has been conducted to test the particular scheme. Further, it will dilute professionalism as well as military ethos and the fighting spirit of the Indian Army. This is because the Agniveers will be recruited for a very short period of time, that is only 4 years. Further, it takes 7 to 8 years to become a fully trained and combat-ready soldiers, which will be one of the biggest hurdles for the particular Agniveers, which will be recruited only for a period of 4 years. However, for those who will be retained, that is the 25% Agniveers who will be retained for full-term service, that should not be an issue with them. Another criticism is that the Agniveers will be risk-averse, as they will use this as a stepping stone for a second career rather than serving the military or army. Further, it has been highlighted that it will hit the basic ethos of Naam, Namak and Nishan, which refers to reputation of the battalion, fidelity and colors for which the soldiers fight. And it is going to lead to militarization of the society, with around 35,000 combat-ready youth being rendered jobless everywhere, because the Agniveer scheme does not retain all the Agniveers which will be recruited under this in the armed forces only. Then there are certain other important key facts related to this scheme which we should be aware of. First is that the Agniveers that are recruited under this scheme will form a distinct rank in the Indian armed forces, and they will be different from any other existing ranks that exist right now. Further, the selection will be the exclusive jurisdiction of the armed forces only, and the enrollment will be based on all India, all class, that is there will be no reservation, and the eligible age group will be from 17.15 to 21 years. The Government of India has also floated a Seva Nidhi fund for all those candidates who will be retiring after the 4 years and will be looking for a second opportunity outside the armed forces. In this regard, a contribution will have to be made by these Agniveers, which will stand at about 5.2 lakh rupees, and a similar amount will be matched by the Government of India. So at the exit, the Agniveers will get rupees 11.71 lakh as Seva Nidhi fund, and this money could be used by these youth for their second career. Also, the amount in this Seva Nidhi will be exempt from income tax. So these are certain features, benefits as well as criticisms of this Agniveer scheme, which can be important for us from both prelims as well as mains examination perspective. With this, let's take up the next news article now. This article on page number 7 is related to child marriage. Now this basically focuses on the National Family Health Survey's highlights related to existence of child marriage in India, and how the National Family Health Survey has highlighted the importance of education in reducing the instances of child marriage. In this context, amendments have also been proposed by the Government of India to the Child Marriage Act. So in this discussion related to child marriage, which can be an important topic for us from General Studies paper 2 point of view in the topic social justice, let us look at different aspects of why does the child marriage exist, what are its effects, and also what are the highlights by the National Family Health Survey, and also what are the proposed amendments in the Child Marriage Act. Let us look at these aspects in detail now. In this regard, as far as the amendments to the Child Marriage Act of 2006 are concerned, the first amendment that is proposed by the government is increasing the age of marriage for females. In this regard, the Prohibition of Child Marriage Act 2006 provides that minimum age of marriage is 21 years in case of males and 18 years in case of females. So that is the existing provision under the existing Child Marriage Act of 2006. However, the new bill under the amendments proposes to increase the minimum age of marriage for females to 21 years. It also specifies that the provision of the Act shall override any other law, custom, usage or practice. Further, the second amendment that has been proposed to the Child Marriage Act is related to time period for filing petition to annul the child marriage. So under the existing Act of 2006, a person who is married before the minimum specified age may apply to annul the marriage. And this petition must be filed within 2 years of attaining maturity, that is 20 years of age. However, the present amendment that has been proposed to the Child Marriage Act of 2006 increases this time period to 5 years, that is 23 years. This brings us to what are the findings of the National Family Health Survey 5 related to the existence and prevalence of child marriage in India and in different states of India. Let us look at these facts and data which can be important for us from mains examination perspective. So according to the NFHS 5, it shows that about 25% of the women aged 18 to 29 years married before their legal marriageable age of 18. And it is marginally lower as compared to the NFHS 4's finding, which found that 28% in this particular age group were married before their legal marriageable age. Secondly, prevalence of child marriage is higher in rural India as compared to urban India, which amounts to 28% in the rural areas and 17% in the urban areas respectively. As far as states are concerned, the highest prevalence of child marriage is in West Bengal, which has about 42% incidences of child marriage, followed by Bihar and Tripura, which have 40% incidences of child marriage. As far as the states with least prevalence of child marriage are concerned, the states like Goa, Himachal and Kerala are at the top. And these have about 6 to 7% of child marriage incidences. So this is the data which we can highlight. So this brings us to what are the causes of the existence of child marriage and what are the adverse impacts of the child marriage. Let us look at that. So as far as the reasons for the prevalence of child marriage are concerned, the first reason is related to poverty or the existence of poverty in India. This is primarily because the parents prefer early marriage for their girl child in order to avoid huge cost of dowry, which is generally associated with delayed marriages. Second is the social and the cultural norms, because these social and cultural norms in various regions have facilitated the preparation of girls' marriage once she has reached menarche. And thirdly, it is primarily because of lack of education and related skills that have further facilitated the child marriage. However, the prevalence of child marriage comes with various adverse impacts. That is, early marriage of the girls makes them more susceptible to health risks that are associated with early sexual initiation and childbearing. Young girls are often subjected to domestic abuse and sexual abuse. Thirdly, early marriage deprives girls from quality education, which in turn minimizes their chances of acquiring any meaningful work, which accentuates the lower status of the women in the family. And finally, highest rates of maternal and child mortality are witnessed in case of early marriage due to lower levels of physical maturity of the girls. In this line, the National Family Health Survey has highlighted the importance of education in curbing the menace of child marriage, which can be one of the important things for us from the mains examination perspective, where we can highlight the findings of the NFHS 5. So the NFHS 5 highlights that the communities that have lower literacy rate have largest share in the child marriage. For example, 39% of the child marriage in India takes place amongst the Adivasis and the Dalits. Further, 58% of the child marriage takes place amongst the poorest wealth groups, that is amongst the bottom 40%. Further, the NFHS survey highlights that the years of schooling go hand in hand with an increase in age at marriage. That is, only 4% of the child marriages in India take place among women who have completed more than 12 years of education. In terms of nutritional outcomes, a higher proportion, that is about 64% of illiterate women, are anemic irrespective of their age of marriage. Further, a case study from Bangladesh can be quoted which can be useful for reducing the instances or prevalence of child marriage in India. In this regard, in Bangladesh, it has been found that improving women's education and imparting them modern skills have resulted in increasing employability, reduced child marriage, as well as improved health and nutritional outcomes. So educating the women along with imparting skills improves their employability and also ensures their social, physical and mental health being. So these are few points related to the prevalence of child marriage in India. What are the reasons for it? What are its adverse impact on the society and women especially? And also how this menace of child marriage can be curbed by using education as a tool. With this, let's take up the next news article now. This article on page number 11 reads that the unemployment has decreased, says the latest labor force survey. In this regard, the periodic labor force survey has highlighted certain insights into the employment situation in India. But before that, let us look at what are the key economic terms that are used to measure the employment and unemployment scenario in a country. After that, we will look at what are the official surveys that are conducted to ascertain the employment situation in India. And after that, we will look at what are the highlights of this present labor force survey. So these points that we discuss here can be important for us from the prelims examination perspective in the economy section. So in this regard, there are certain key terms or the terms which are used to measure the employment situation in a country. First, of course, is the labor force. So what is labor force? It includes all the people who are presently employed or are searching for jobs. And in case of India, there are about 52 crore people who are considered to be labor force. It includes 48 crore people who are employed and 3 crore people who are unemployed. Second term that is frequently used is workforce. It includes all people who are presently employed. This refers to the 48 crore people who are presently employed. Then another term that is frequently used to measure the unemployment rate in a country. This includes labor force minus the workforce divided by the labor force multiplied by 100. So this simply means that labor force minus the workforce divided by the labor force. So this simply highlights the ratio of the unemployed people with that of the total labor force multiplied by 100. Then there is labor force participation rate, and this is measured as a percentage of population which is a part of labor force in a country. This labor force participation is measured in two ways. First is percentage of total population or percentage of working age population. In the first case, it is the labor force divided by the total population of country multiplied by 100. As far as percentage of working age population is concerned, it is measured by dividing the labor force divided by working age population multiplied by 100. In case of India, the working age is considered to be 15 years to 64 years of age. So all those people who are falling within this group is used to measure the percentage of working age population. And regarding the worker population ratio, which is WPR, it is the percentage of employed persons in the population. So this is how there are different terms that are used to measure the employment scenario in a country. So clearly we have understood the difference between the different terms that are used to ascertain the employment situation, which include the labor force, what exactly is workforce, how is unemployment rate calculated, how is the labor force participation rate calculated, and worker population ratio calculated. Now let us look at what are the official surveys that are conducted in India related to employment situation. First is the payroll reporting. This is published by National Statistical Office. It measures employment related statistics in formal sector only. So this can be an important fact for us from prelims examination perspective. Then it uses information on the number of subscribers who have joined the social security schemes like Employees Provident Fund Scheme, etc. Second is the quarterly employment survey report. This is published by Labour Bureau under the Ministry of Labour and Employment. It measures employment situation in selected non-farm industrial sector, and it covers 8 major sectors including manufacturing, construction, trade, transport and education, etc. And then there is periodic labor force survey report. It is published by National Statistical Office, similar to the first one. And this PLFS survey has replaced the earlier quinquennial 5-year employment and unemployment surveys that used to exist or that used to be conducted in India. It involves quarterly employment survey in urban areas and annual survey in rural areas. So these are the 3 important surveys that are conducted in India to ascertain the employment scenario. Then let us look at what are the highlights of this PLFS survey. So as far as the labor force participation rate is concerned, amongst men, it increased from about 56.8% in 2019-20 to 57.5% in 2021. As far as women labor force participation rate is concerned, it has also increased from 22.8% in 2019-20 to 25.1% in 2021. And overall, the labor force participation rate in our country has increased from 40% in 2019-20 to 41.6% in 2020-21. So this is how the labor force participation rates looks like under the PLFS survey. And you can also see this change in terms of this graph that has been given in this particular infographic. With this, let's take up the next news article now. This article on page number 6 is related to the malnutrition situation in India. Now, this is a big cause of concern as far as social issues are concerned, and it is also important for us from the mains examination perspective. We have covered malnutrition in a previous DNS video. So let us revise from a previous DNS video the basic issues associated with malnutrition, how it is measured, what are its causes, and what are the schemes that have been started by Government of India to deal with the situation of malnutrition in India. Now, if you look at the issue of malnutrition and how the malnutrition is defined, you can understand that malnutrition refers to deficiencies, excesses, or imbalances in a person's intake of energy or nutrients. So malnutrition on the one hand refers also to limited or deficiencies of intake of particular nutrients, and at the same time it can also include focus on excessive use of certain nutrients. For example, people who are overly relying on only carbohydrates in their diet can have obesity, and that is also a kind of malnutrition. And on the other hand, people might be lacking in certain kinds of micronutrients, and that is known as deficiency related malnutrition. And accordingly, there are 3 broad groups of conditions that are used to define the malnutrition. First is undernutrition, and this undernutrition includes wasting, that is low weight for height. Second is stunting, that is low height for a particular age, that is what should be the supposed height for a particular age. The particular person has not achieved that height. Then there is underweight, that is low weight for age. So these are the 3 groups under undernutrition. Then there is micronutrient related malnutrition, and this includes micronutrient deficiencies, that is lack of important vitamins and minerals. Further, a third kind of malnutrition is overweight or obesity, and this is diet related non communicable disease. It includes heart diseases, strokes, diabetes, some kinds of cancers. All these are associated with overweight or obesity. We all are aware that in the urban areas in India, the focus on food has been on junk food, and that is leading to issues associated with obesity or overweight. So that is also one kind of malnutrition. So these are the broad categories into which the malnutrition is defined. This brings us to what exactly is the status of malnutrition in India. Now, if you want to understand the status of malnutrition in India, the government of India carries out National Family Health Survey. And according to the National Family Health Survey, or the NFHS 2019 to 21, 7.7% of children are severely wasted, while 19.3% are wasted and 35.5% are stunted. At the same time, 3.4% children are overweight, and this figure was only 2.1% in NFHS 4. That is, as compared to the last NFHS survey, the situation has deteriorated in India. Then if you look at anemia among the children under the age group of 5, the situation has worsened, and currently it is about 67.1% as compared to 58.6% according to NFHS 4. That is, over the last survey, things have worsened in the latest survey, that is NFHS 5. Further, 57% of women in the reproductive age are anemic in the country. So all this data can be really important for us to understand the status of malnutrition in India. And in this bar graph, you can see the comparison of the details related to malnutrition status in India on the basis of the NFHS 4 and NFHS 5. So if you look at how things have worsened in India on different parameters, if you look at anemia as one of the parameters, it was about 58.6 in the NFHS 4. However, it has increased to about 67.1% in NFHS 5. If you look at stunting, it was 38% in NFHS 4. It has reduced to 35% in NFHS 5. Then if you look at wasting, it has reduced from 21% in NFHS 4 to 19% in NFHS 5. However, if you look at overweight situation, this thing has deteriorated over the NFHS 4, which was about 2.1% in NFHS 4, and now it is about 3.4% in the NFHS 5. So this is how this data and bar graph can be used in writing or highlighting the status of malnutrition in India. Then if you look at the overweight or obesity in adult males and females, it was about 24% in NFHS 4. Now this has reduced to about 20% in overweight or obese women in India. And if you look at the situation of overweight and obesity in men, it was about 22% in NFHS 4, and it has also reduced to about 18.9% in 5. So even though we see that on some parameters the situation has improved, but still if you look at the absolute number, this is way too high for a country to focus upon. And that is why this brings us to what exactly are the causes of malnutrition in India. So if you look at the reasons for malnutrition in India, there are various factors that are leading to the issues associated with malnutrition. These include poverty, poor feeding habits, infectious diseases, lack of sanitation, lack of dietary diversity, and inefficiencies in the public distribution system. So if you look at poverty, it highlights that because of low purchasing power, poor people cannot afford to buy desired amount and desired quality of food for the family. For example, the poor people mainly focus on carbohydrate related things like rice or wheat, but they do not focus more, or they are not capable of focusing more on the diversity in diet so that they can fulfill the micronutrient requirements of the family. And this adversely affects their capacity for physical work, and that is why they earn less also. And this leads to a vicious cycle of poverty, undernutrition, diminished work capacity, low earning, and poverty. Further, the malnutrition is also associated with feeding habits. And in this context, there is lack of awareness of nutritional qualities of food. There are irrational beliefs at times about food, and inappropriate child rearing and feeding habits lead to undernutrition in the family. Further, infectious diseases like malaria, measles, or recurrent attacks of diarrhea may precipitate acute malnutrition and aggravate the existing nutritional deficit in children and also in different age groups. Further, there is issue associated with lack of sanitation, and lack of safe drinking water and sanitation is leading cause of infections. And this in itself or in turn leads to malnutrition related issues in India. Further, there is lack of dietary diversity, and this is mainly due to food inflation, changing dietary patterns. Further, monocropping also results in micronutrient deficiency. For example, in certain areas of India, wheat and rice culture are the focus as far as the cropping pattern is concerned. And these areas are known for monocropping of wheat and rice cultures. And the focus on millets, etc., which have certain important micronutrients, is reducing. And that is why these monocropping patterns are leading to overfocus on only certain types of foods or cereals. So that is leading to lack of dietary diversity in various parts of India. Further, there are inefficiencies in the public distribution system, and these are due to leakages, inclusion errors, or inadequate coverage of the migrants. Further, besides all these factors, there are factors which are socio-cultural in nature, and these are also leading causes of malnutrition in families in India. So if you look at the socio-cultural factors, inequitable distribution of food in family is one of the factors. And if you look at most of the poor households in India, women and preschool children, especially girls, receive less food than the economically active male members. And that is why you might be aware that the government of India has been focusing on the midday meal program, which aims at providing the or meeting the nutritional requirements of the children who are studying in the government schools in India. Further, in families which are large and where there is rapid succession of pregnancies, it adversely affects the nutritional status of mother, and associated with the nutritional status of mother is the nutritional status of children. And a particular problem in the big families is that women tries to focus more on managing the big family, and in this context she may neglect her own health and antenatal checkups during pregnancy, and undernutrition may lead to low birth weight, and in large families per capita availability of food is also less. Further, there is poor quality of housing, sanitation and water supply, and these contribute to ill health and infections. And then there are inadequate maternal and child care. So improving the primary health centers and other healthcare services in rural India will improve the nutrition profile of women and children. In this context, let us look at some of the initiatives that have been taken by the Government of India to improve the nutritional status of its population. So if you look at the government initiatives to tackle malnutrition, first step is of course the National Food Security Act. And this act has the objective to provide for food and nutritional security in human life cycle approach. And this is done by ensuring access to adequate quantity and quality of food at affordable prices to people to live a life with dignity. This act also has a special focus on the nutritional support to women and children. Then there is midday meal program that I've already highlighted, and it is the world's largest school feeding program, reaching out to about 12 crore children across the country. And this program aims at enhancing enrollment, retention and attendance, and simultaneously improving the nutritional levels among children. Then there is public distribution system, and it plays an important role in the provision of food security, and PDS in India is the largest distribution network of its type in the world. Then there is Antyodaya Anna Yojana, and it focuses on identification of 1 crore poorest of the poor families amongst the below poverty line families. And these are covered under targeted PDS within the states, and they focus on providing them food grains at a highly subsidized rate. Then recently the government had started Poshan Abhiyan, and it aims to reduce malnutrition through a life cycle concept, adopting a synergized and result oriented approach. And in this context, it is implemented by Ministry of Women and Child Development, and the target of the mission is to bring down stunting in the children between the age group of 0 to 6 years from 38.4% to 25% by 2022. It also aims to reduce anemia among women and adolescent girls in the age group of 15 to 49 years and reduce the low birth weight, because 15 to 49 years is considered to be the reproductive age of women. And that is why the focus of this program is specifically on reducing anemia among women and adolescent girls. With this, we conclude today's discussion, and this is the question for the day.